Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Dick Ranck. Hey, Dick, how are you today?
I'm fine. And yourself too, I hope, Craig.
Very well, thank you very much. Like normal, I went online and selected a few pieces of yours that I found interesting. I had some questions about, and I specifically wanted to start with this painting because there's a lot going on in this picture. There are a lot of layers, a lot of symbols, so a lot of different types of mark making. I'm loving those little circles that you put in there. Is there a story behind this? Can you tell me about this picture?
Well, most of my paintings, this one as well, were not planned. That is to say, I
Nice.
had no sketches brief beforehand. I just started painting. Um, I'll start with the circles. They're lifted right out of current Aboriginal painting. I had been to Australia once or twice and had asked about them if there was meaning to them. And what I was told is that within Australian work, the stuff that's tribal is never shown, that these dots are lifted and used in contemporary painting, but without any specific purpose that I'm aware of, which I felt freed me to do any damn thing I wanted with them, which it just sort of adds air to the piece.
Hmm.
The bull comes from my interest in the Minotaur,
Hmm.
the story of Theseus, Ariadne, and the group, which I've also linked to some cave paintings. Just I'm very interested in early art.
Hmm.
And the rest of my work just happens as I go along. Those are colors that I'm comfortable with and move around until I get a story. In this
When I
case,
first saw those circles, it made me think more like not a hallucinogenic, but more like when you get tired, you see spots, right?
yeah.
So I like that added layer to it, like into the picture. But my question about this is, do you plan out? I know you didn't said you didn't do any sketches, but do you ever plan out your color palettes beforehand, or is it all spur of the moment?
Yes and no. I have a
Okay.
vocabulary of colors that I like.
All right.
And as I'm moving from painting to painting and painting on sculpture, some colors appeal to me that I want to use. Um, I like blue. I like earth colors, um, particularly sort of Mediterranean terracotta color. Um, and I just have them on my palette and I kind of like see, well, where would that go?
Hmm.
And there's a little bit of landscape sort of design in this, which explains some of the color. I wish I have to tell you this. I just had a show at Rosemont College, and I was there after the opening, and a woman came in, and she started talking about my painting in ways I had no idea that I was doing. So I'm a little bit stunted in this conversation, but I will say that she talked at length about Carl Jung,
Uh-huh.
the symbolism of ancient cultures,
Yep.
and et cetera. And I was kind of like dumbfounded, like I don't even know what I'm doing. So it's hard for me to
But
answer
that's
that.
that's common for most artists. I mean, most artists I've talked to will tell you that somebody can walk in and explain to them what they're doing and they had no idea about it. That's a common kind of a thing. Um, I think she was right. I mean, honestly, what you just said, that how you relate it, that tracks, I think, with this particular painting. So I do want to move on, but I have one quick question.
So
If this particular picture, you have an interest in the Minotaur, and then there's another sort of stag to the right of it. Is the central figure at all you?
I'd call this autobiographical, yes.
All right.
I feel like an artist is generally caught between two worlds
Mm-hmm.
and what he's trying to accomplish. And so I often have two worlds in my work.
Interesting.
His one hand's extended to kind of control the ball.
So I want to move on to this piece because it is so different from the first one. And to me, I'm seeing this as really sort of play and experimentation with your color palette. I probably should have saved that first question for this one. Um, I think this is a smaller picture than the first one. Um, what am I looking at here?
Well, the title of the painting is Self-Reliance. And the painting is about almost the same size, just we're
Hmm.
square, it's a rectangle. Um, for a while, as I was trying to move into more non-objective work, I started using the triangle as a protagonist, so it shows up in different ways. Um, and then I just started painting. Try this, try that, try this, try that. I saw it as sort of as a quilt. I see this little figure at the top is from a page from a book that a friend sent me. Um, as sort of something to live by, I guess. And
Hmm.
I just thought top of the pyramid, self-reliant.
That's quite fascinating. I see. I did not see that as a figure at first, but now I think I can. Um, your work often has like, for better or worse, dreamlike qualities, I find. Do you ever incorporate dreams within your work, or is it just opening the floodgates for your subconscious?
I think dreams are important in my work in so much as when I'm working hard on a painting, I'll often dream about it simply because I can erase things and put things together and have done no damage whatsoever. And from my experience in Australia and this whole idea of dream time, I do try to let what is inside out. So I think the dreaminess is a pretty good way of talking about it.
Do you dream before? Do you dream of the picture before it's made, or do you dream afterwards of what you've made, or is that a combination?
I'd say once I'm in the painting and having working hard at it and not sure where I'm going next, I dream in it. But um, I guess I once did a drawing of myself naked, big drawing, and I commented to a friend at the show at Gang Gallery that I saved myself $4,000 of therapy doing it. So
Just for?
I, I would say that I do a lot of sort of thinking and solving. Sometimes it's expressed as line and color.
So you would you consider then the canvas sort of your um your playground, your experimentation basis?
Yes, that's why I rarely start with anything beforehand. I do want to say that I don't think of my work as therapy.
Hmm.
I was joking about that, but I
Oh,
do the idea that I think about these problems or life things while I'm working. I'm stuttering, but you get the
so
idea.
if you don't consider it therapy, but does your work help center you?
Yes, it gives me a great deal of freedom. In my
Okay,
studio, I can be anywhere, anytime, any place.
okay. I think that that's what most people mean when they talk about therapy and art, not not a Freudian kind of a thing. I
Right.
did want before we moved on, I wanted to ask you about this particular painting. I had a question about. I love that you've added a secondary little canvas at the top notch there. Should I be if I'm reading that as a head? Would I be correct or not?
No, but I would say it was a small painting that I was doing at the same time that relates to below. And the design of it is such that it could be a head. The way the lines move up, the way it sort of summarizes the movement below.
Well, I like the looseness of your interpretations. That's kind of it's fun for me as a viewer because when I first saw this painting, it was just pure abstraction to me, and I was enjoying the layers. I love the black lines in the bottom, and then I was wondering, oh, if that's a head, then that everything sort of changes for me. So I was kind of cool with that. That was a fun thing to see.
Thank you.
Um, so I want to move on. You also make sculpture, and I think you make quite a bit of sculpture. There was quite a few selections on your website. How long have you been making sculpture? Just as long as painting?
Well, once I stopped painting the figure uh, and tried to move towards abstraction where I thought I belonged, I was having a hard time because I really enjoyed doing that sort of interior of the canvas or the paper. And it was hard for me not to have that in there. So I started making these little small dimensional things about this big, sort of like little tchotchkes, and I'd wrap some thread around them and do some stuff. And I put them on the canvas, which allowed the process to come out as opposed to go in, which was my first concern. And that just grew. Ed Szanski reviewed a show of mine. He says, "Love the paint and color, but I don't understand the little twigs." And I thought, well, I'll show you, Ed. So I started getting bigger pieces of wood, and this is around 1996, 97,
Okay.
and picked up a mallet and chisels, and found that I was fairly adept at it for no particular reason.
Mm. When you're working on a sculpture like this, is this something where you're trying to force the materials to fit your vision, or are you finding the form within the structure itself?
The wood tells all. I really look at it and see that. I also have books of Oceania and Africa, and I certainly look at them. But as far as gesture and overall thing, at first I see what the wood will give me and go from there.
Interesting. So this was another sculpture that I really enjoy the armature. It's both refined and very rough to begin with. Um, can you tell me when you were doing this particular one, did you like your paintings? Did you just approach it without any preconceived ideas, and as you're working on it, it evolves? Is that how these are made?
I'd say so. I mean, I'm tending towards wood that as anywhere from 4 to 6 feet tall that has some sense of a figure in it. That's what attracts me. So where the two arms are coming out, I saw as a possibility for extending or adding something to and putting a head on it. The rest of it just, I think, well, that would be fun. You'll see a sort of a kneeling figure in the middle. That's supposed to be the Minotaur,
Mm,
and the Minotaur again. And actually, I think the Minotaur is kind of a tragic figure. I sympathize with him.
mhm.
He didn't ask for it. He got it.
Right. Uh, I kind of a geeky question on this. Do you do anything to your wooden sculptures to preserve them? I mean, do you add any kind of patinas or like a protective layer, or just like let it go?
Both.
Okay.
I do a lot of stains, some shellac, some varnish, spar varnish. Um, since I work inside, I don't worry about it too much. But if I was selling a piece, I would spray it, the whole
Hmm.
piece, with
Hmm.
some kind of polyurethane or so, which
These, these are meant to be inside, though.
well, I do. I mean, somebody said, "What can I do? I want to put it outside." I said, "Well, I mean, I make them inside. I kind of like them inside, but no, they can be." I've sold one outside and treated it accordingly.
Yeah. I would love to
Sprayed it.
see this in a natural setting. I think it would really come forward. So I wanted to end on this particular painting. So, when we talked about the first painting and that figure being you but not being you, I saw the reason I asked that question is I saw this painting and I saw that figure, and I would have bet money that in some way this figure was you, sort of reaching.
There are three. I parse myself in three parts in
Mm,
some of my work, and I refer to them as Mr. Id, the
mm-hmm.
figure, and then Mr. Id in heaven, which is this guy. There's
Okay.
another one called Mr. Id in hell, and yeah, here I am. Here's the figure in heaven reaching out. It's just out of interest. The first figure on the right side was a bird,
Okay.
and I thought, who the hell cares if I paint birds? I mean, do I care? It was just more of an exercise to see what I could do.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but the figure evolved, and I scumbled around, and decided to put the color in as individual blocks,
Uh-huh.
sort of talking about reaching out for one or another color, the search for the right color.
Oh yeah. So I'm
And
I'm curious about your revisions within your work. Is it common that most of the time, if you're experimenting on your canvas, that you just expect that there will be massive revisions?
yeah, I'm not smart enough to get it right the first time. So yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Have
Plus,
you ever gotten it right the first time?
oh, I may have thought so, but the next day when I came back to the studio, I was alarmed by what had
I
thought.
know if I get it right the first time, there's something wrong. It's not.
Yeah.
It's too easy. Um,
I figure based on my looking at Turner that it should look like the first time.
hmm hmm
I'm not interested in evoking struggle, but
Right.
The
this piece
surface
is a
is full of fence.
this piece is a winner. I would love to see this one in person. So I wanted to ask you. I want to start at your sort of beginnings. One of
Okay.
the questions I like to ask people is, do you have an earliest memory of being exposed to art?
Yeah, my mother and to some extent my father, art books. I used to get them for my birthday right through high
Okay.
school. Occasionally, not only, but both parents were interested in art, my mother in particular, and they had a friend, a guy named John Falter, and Franklin Watkins, another painter, who I met. I remember the first time I went in Watkins' studio in Avalon. I just went, whoa, that's a good life.
And that
I
stuck
just,
with you.
yeah, I've always been interested. I can't say it was my first, but I expected to make a career out of it.
Hmm.
You know, I
So,
would,
at what point did you decide that you wanted to become an artist?
well, I had some recognition, but it was more fun that people at cocktail parties to talk about it and for me to listen to it than actually take it seriously. But I finished Penn. I went to Penn to paint. I found that intolerable. Um, I switched to art history,
Hmm.
uh, which turned out to be a good thing for me. Then I enlisted in the army, and while I was in the army, I was stationed in Germany. And I started reading a lot of 20th century fiction,
Mm.
and like Nabokov and Philip Roth and Lawrence Durrell and those guys. And I thought, I'm really interested in narrative.
Hmm.
I'm not that good a writer, but I can kind of do that as an artist. And I think that's where I need to be.
Hmm.
And so when I came out of the army, I enrolled at the Academy of Fine Arts to pursue.
Okay. So, how much of your work is driven by a storyline versus experimentation?
I answered that by saying paint is always a story.
Mm,
And then
that's good.
whether I'm telling you haiku or phrase, novels, but the
Mm,
paint's always a story. That's what
okay.
I'm driven. That's how I left. That's why I left the figure to paint just with paint because I
Hmm.
just found I wanted to look at the palette and the canvas, not the
Hmm.
model.
Oh, I totally get it. Um, it it does uh, make me wonder. I want to know just a little bit more about your creative process and
Yeah.
um, when you're working on a new picture. Um, have you developed over time a methodology for your creativity? In other words, is are there things that you do in order to uh, light your creativity on fire when you're going to start something new?
No, because it's
Okay.
always there. It's always there.
Okay.
Um, I'm a very much. I guess it's worth saying that being athletic and involved in sports has been important to my work
Okay.
because I just really like doing things with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very tactile.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so if nothing else, I just go outside and look.
Okay.
It seems going, and then of course I'll look at other people's work and see that really looks like I should try that, or it just gets me going.
Hmm. So
I
you
think
could
that
turn around right now and just start working.
well, I have a headache. I
Okay,
just
so
took
there are
down,
barriers.
I just took down, I just took down my show at Rosemont, so I'm a little worn out. But yeah, I could. I was in the studio and thought maybe I should stay here.
Okay. So is it just working itself is what can motivate you?
Working combined with learning and understanding.
Okay.
I
Do
really
you
like to
always
learn.
need to learn from your work? Is that a driver?
I need to learn from the things around me. And that's the driver. Then that goes into my work is trying to understand whether it's design or a story or what's in my heart. It's kind of like this.
Okay. Yeah, there's no other way to describe it. I get it. I'm curious. It seemed like with some artists knew that they were going to be artists from childhood. You started, once you're out of college, if I'm understanding you correctly. But
Edit that. I just want to
okay,
say that I, I knew I could do art from the time I was before school.
right.
It's just that in our particular family, that wasn't necessarily the goal that everybody took.
Hmm.
So I was always doing it, but I made up my mind
To
in the
do it.
army.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you have been making work for years, right?
Yes.
Um, how do you feel that your work has changed over the years?
A huge change from taking great pleasure in seeing things and reproducing them,
Okay.
and the accolades that sometimes come with that, to not relying on what I see and relying more about what I think about the materials and what they can do, and maybe getting people to see things a little differently.
Hmm. So let's talk about your audiences. When you're in your studio making work, do you think of your audience at all?
Not in the way you're describing. No, I really don't worry about, as you can see from my career, I don't worry about whether my work is going to sell. I
Right.
just try to make the best painting I can, um, and hope
So
that speaks for itself.
does that mean are you concerned with what people walk away from your work with? Does that enter your mind? Are you hoping they have a certain feeling or what, or is that just like whatever happens,
No, I
happens?
do care. I do care what people. I mean, it's a dialogue with me. It's not a monologue,
Okay.
which is why I like to show my work. I found that there's enough strange things in my work to at least instigate conversation and questions.
When you're talking about, you know, things in your work, have you ever found revelations in your work that you have made years prior? Do you ever go back and look at older work and discover new things?
Well, I will say first of all, the advent of a digital phone in a camera has sometimes nearly ruined my life, because I'll
Uh-huh.
take a picture of what I'm working on and then completely blow the canvas apart, and then go back and see the picture and go, "Oh shit,
Right.
I wish I had done that." I
But
would
I
like to
see, I think
go
that's
ahead.
common though. I mean, I like when I look at photos of the progress like that Matisse did on certain paintings of his, where I was like, oh, he should have stopped there. I think it's a commonality. I don't think it's just
Oh,
you.
I don't disagree, but you're just asking about looking back. I just think I've gotten better.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how
Uh,
else to answer that.
when you say better, do you mean tighter or clearer, or better is very subjective?
I was
Happier?
hoping I was hoping I'd get away with better. I
So,
guess I get that comment from other people, like John Thornton, who made a movie of the show. Um, he and I were talking. He said, you've really gotten more abstract, and your abstractions are much better. And I went, so I guess I've gotten better.
okay.
Um,
Well, I know how I would answer that. I think for me, the work, what interests me about your work is I walk away with more questions than answers. I mean, real questions. Like what am I actually looking at here? Like, what does this mean to me as a viewer? So, um, I like that. I
that's
think to me that's a good quality of being better. That I'm not bored by it. That's for sure.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate that. That's certainly a goal. I haven't always answered your question correctly, but that's a goal. That's a goal of mine.
let's talk about color for a minute. Can you
Okay.
just tell me what you think about color?
I love color.
Okay.
My youngest granddaughter is going, "Granddaddy, what's your favorite color?" And I go, "Everything."
Right.
Um, I know there's things associated with colors. Um, and that person who looked at my painting and explained it to me, the relevance of terracotta and blue has some meaning that I'm not entirely sure of. They just really appeal to me. But I like all color. It's always I love to mix grays and stuff from disparate colors. I should say that once I have a semi-color palette on my mind for a canvas,
Hmm.
then I will be constantly mixing those colors to find a different color, but so that it maintains some relevance. The color has, whether it goes way wide or way tight, that everything has relevance to each other.
When I see your work as a viewer, your forms are interesting, but I see you as somebody who speaks in color. I mean, that's just how I'm approaching your work, and I like that because I like the palettes that you're using. Um, so you make paintings and you make sculptures. Have you ever work in any other mediums? Like, do you make multiples of your work? Do you ever make prints or photography or poetry, dance, anything?
I do a fair amount of writing in my
Okay.
journals as I'm in the studio. I make, sort of like four-line sort of descriptions of what I'm thinking about with some of I might take paint that I didn't, because acrylic's dry. I might take some of the paint I was using that I like and in an 8x10 make some marks or stuff and then write about it. And then some of the remarks would be silly, like, please don't tell your mother, might be the whole title of the piece, or
Hmm.
something long and drawn out. But yeah, right, but not.
Do you ever rework old paintings, or are they once they're done, they're done?
Oh, I mean, they go into a stack and they come out again.
Okay.
To get some separation. Yes, I rework old.
Okay. Sometimes people, artists I've come across is like once they've finished it, it's like it doesn't exist anymore, and they just put it, they never touch it. And others artists are like, oh, I ruin everything.
I would say this, I was trained as a figure painter. That's what I did at the academy. I got
Mhm.
into a couple of galleries doing that and got a few accolades. And so when I was done, I knew I was done.
Mm.
With abstract, no, I never had any critique in abstraction. I just sort of wandered in that direction. So I'm never quite sure. I
So
look at
I've got
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm dragging
that's
this
okay.
out.
I've got time for just one more question. Time
Go.
flies. What does making art do for you?
It's a calling. It's a necessity. I don't know that it does anything for me. It depends upon how I look at it. Um, but it's a great place for me to be, and it has given me relationships and conversations that I otherwise wouldn't have had.
Great
It
answer.
takes,
Great answer. Well, Dick, I want to thank you for talking with me today about your work. Big fan. I can't wait to come to your next exhibition. And I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch Art Show today. We really appreciate your support, especially liking and subscribing. That lets YouTube push it out to more people and get more people to know about our artists. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. If I can't answer them, we'll pass them along to Dick. Again, thank you very much for coming by today and talking to me. Appreciate it.
thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Craig.
Take care, everyone.